Welcome to Dreamtone Stories, where your journey into relaxation begins. Let go of the day as we take you on a calming story designed to ease your mind and guide you gently into restful sleep. To help you fully relax, the screen will gently fade after 15 minutes. There'll be nothing left to see, only the sound of story and sleep. The sea was a constant companion for Elliot Rowe. Perched on the edge of the world, the cliffside lighthouse had been his home for nearly a decade. Towering above jagged rocks and windswept bluffs, it stood as a stoic sentinel facing the Atlantic's ever-changing moods. Fog wrapped the tower in misty scarves during the early mornings, and at night, waves hissed and crashed against the base like ancient lullabies. Elliot had grown to love these rhythms, the murmurs of water and wind more comforting than any human voice. The village below was quiet, sleepy, and distant by design. Elliot made rare trips down the winding path to restock supplies or send the occasional letter, but otherwise kept to himself. They knew him there as the keeper. Children whispered stories about him, wondering if he was a ghost himself. It never bothered him. He preferred solitude. Each morning, Elliot would wake before the sun, climb the spiral staircase to the lantern room, and clean the heavy lens with reverent care. Then he'd descend to the small parlor below, brew a pot of coffee, and sit by the weathered window facing the sea. He had a single armchair, a small bookshelf, a fireplace that crackled warmly through winter, and an old brass clock that chimed every hour with a deep, pleasant tone. On this particular morning, the fog was thicker than usual. It hung low over the ocean, swallowing the horizon. Even the gulls were silent. As Elliot adjusted the dials and checked the oil levels in the lamp, a peculiar sound caught his ear. An echo, perhaps, or a voice in the mist. He paused, turning toward the open hatch that led to the outside deck. The sound didn't repeat, just the wind again, moaning softly around the stone walls. He shook his head. He'd been hearing things lately. Fragments of songs, distant laughter, whispers in the creak of the beams. Came with the job. Long hours alone made the mind wander. And yet, there was a feeling growing in his chest, a sensation like a tide turning. That evening, as twilight bled into indigo, Elliot lit the lantern and watched its beam sweep across the misty waters. A ghostly glow painted silver ribbons over the surf. He stood silently listening. Then it came again. A voice. Faint. Almost melodic. This time it was unmistakable. It called not his name, but something older, something unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. Not frightened, but deeply curious, Elliot descended back to the sitting room. He retrieved an old journal from the shelf, one kept by the previous keeper, a man named James Mallory, who had vanished over 30 years prior. Elliot hadn't opened the journal in years, but the thought tugged at him now like a memory rising from a dream. The entries were weathered and sparse. Most were ordinary. Notes on lamp maintenance, supply lists, tide charts. But then one stood out. There's something beneath the waves. I see it when the fog is thickest like now. A shape or a light pulsing faintly. Calling. I don't feel fear. I feel remembered. Elliot read the passage 3 times. He closed the book, heart slow but steady. He set it down beside the clock, whose chime rang out low and clear as if in reply. Outside, the seaside and the fog thickened. That night, Elliot dreamt of the sea. But it wasn't the sea he knew, the churning surface and familiar currents, but something deeper. He floated in endless blue, weightless, as bioluminescent tendrils curled and drifted around him. Shapes moved just beyond visibility, their silhouettes fluid and ancient, their presence soothing rather than frightening. One shape in particular lingered, a tall, slender figure draped in strands of light, its face obscured by a shimmer like sun through water. It didn't speak, but Elliot understood. It was waiting, not for rescue but recognition. When he awoke, the air smelled faintly of salt and lavender. A strange combination, he thought, rising slowly from bed. The storm shutters rattled softly against the wind. He reached for his robe, lit the oil lamp on his desk, and padded barefoot down the wooden stairs. Something about the dream refused to leave him. It pressed at the corners of his mind, like a song he once knew. The journal lay where he left it. He picked it up again. James Mallory's writing became erratic in the last few pages. Some were nearly illegible, ink bleeding from damp, or scratched through with deep lines. But one entry stood out. It was dated the final day Mallory had been seen. "The sea is remembering me. She's calling again tonight. The fog is thick and the light above won't hold them back. I go now not in fear but in faith. She's beautiful. So beautiful. I see her eyes in the tide. I feel her hands in the current. This is not an ending." Elliot closed the book and pressed his hand to the window pane. The ocean below was cloaked in shadow and mist, yet he felt it. Some unseen pulse like a heart beating under the waves. He spent the rest of the day in quiet observation. A soft rain fell through the morning, bringing with it a stillness that blanketed the island. The usual gulls did not return. No fishing boats came into view. Even the clouds moved slowly, as though reluctant to leave. By evening, a knock came at the door. Elliot turned confused. No one ever came up this far uninvited. He opened the heavy wood door to find a young woman standing on the stone threshold. Her hair was wet from the mist, her coat too thin for the chill. She looked no older than 30, but her eyes held something older, something quiet and watchful. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I followed the light." Elliot nodded and stepped aside, gesturing her in. "You shouldn't have climbed the path alone. It's dangerous in the fog." She stepped inside, brushing water from her sleeves. It was calling. The light. Or something near it. He studied her. She didn't seem lost exactly, but she wasn't quite at ease either. She looked at the lighthouse walls like one would look at a place they'd only ever seen in dreams. "I'm Elliot," he said. "The keeper." She gave a faint smile. "I know." They sat across from each other beside the fireplace. He poured tea. She accepted it without speaking. For a while, the only sounds were the soft crackle of flame and the distant boom of the surf. Then at last she spoke again. "I think I've been here before. But not like this." Elliot tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I've seen this place in my dreams," she whispered. "The staircase. The lantern room. Even the clock. I don't remember when it started. Just that it's always been the same. I climb the stairs, open the lantern chamber door and see something waiting. A woman, maybe. Or a memory." Elliot's pulse slowed. He didn't reply. Instead, he rose, crossed to the shelf, and brought back the journal. He handed it to her, open to Mallory's last entry. She read it, her brow furrowing, then looked up. "My grandmother's name was Eliza Mallory." The room went still. "I think James Mallory was her father," she said. She never spoke of him except in dreams. I always thought she was confused, said he'd gone to sea, and not in the way most people do. She'd sit by the window during storms and hum. Always the same melody. Elliot's heart tightened. The melody. He'd heard it too, in the fog, in the wind, in the way the waves crashed. Without speaking, he stood, motioned for her to follow, and began to climb the spiral stairs to the lantern room. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. At the top, the lantern's great lens cast its steady glow across the sea. The fog had thickened once more, turning the world into a void of silver and gray. Then, far below, something moved. Not a boat, not a shadow, a shimmer, a soft blue light beneath the water's surface. It pulsed once, twice, then faded. The woman drew a sharp breath. She's calling again. Elliot placed a hand on the glass, eyes fixed on the sea. The lighthouse had never simply been a beacon. It had always been a door. The shimmer beneath the water faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only ripples of uncertainty and awe. Elliot stood motionless, hands still resting on the cold glass of the lantern chamber. Beside him, Eliza, granddaughter of the missing James Mallory, watched the horizon as if searching for a thread in the mist. Neither spoke for a long time. Then quietly she asked, "Do you believe it?" He didn't answer at first. His thoughts drifted back through the years, back to his first day as keeper, when the village council handed him the keys with hushed voices and somber eyes. They had never spoken of James Mallory, only warned that the sea here was different. "Respect it," they had said. "I've lived here long enough to stop disbelieving things," Elliot finally replied. The lantern slowly rotated, casting light into the fog like a heartbeat, slow, rhythmic, eternal. Each pass briefly illuminated the swirling mist beyond the glass, revealing shapes that might have been waves or something more. Eliza stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the brass railing. "My grandmother said the sea remembers," she murmured. "She used to whisper stories when she thought I was asleep, about how it doesn't just hold wrecks and ruins but thoughts, feelings, people who were never meant to leave." A silence stretched between them again, thick as the fog outside. Then Elliot turned and walked to a small wooden panel in the floor. He knelt, lifted it, and retrieved something wrapped in oilcloth. He handed it to Eliza. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a delicate silver compass, old, slightly tarnished, but humming faintly in her hand. On the inside lid, an inscription was etched in ornate script. "To remember where we came from, to return when it's time." Her breath caught. "It was in the rocks near the cliff," Elliot said. "Found it years ago. I didn't know what it meant until now." Eliza held it tightly, the needle slowly spinning, not toward north but out to sea. The light swept past once more. This time they both heard it. The faint melody. Not wind, not echo. A song. Waiting. That night sleep came slowly. Elliot sat beside the fireplace long after Eliza had gone to rest in the guest quarters below. The journal sat open in his lap, the final pages fluttering gently in the draft that slipped through the window cracks. The sea continued its gentle song beyond the stone walls, just audible enough to feel intentional. The melody had shape now, not just notes but meaning. Like a lullaby passed down through generations, like a voice trying not to be forgotten. He leaned forward and fed another log into the fire. The flame danced higher, casting warm light over the brass clock. Midnight chimed, deep and sonorous, and with it came another subtle shift in the air. A tension easing. as if something had been waiting for the right time. A soft creak echoed above. Elliot rose and climbed the steps to the lantern room once more. Eliza was already there, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, standing at the edge of the glass like a statue carved from memory. "It's stronger tonight," she said, her voice a whisper. "Can you feel it?" He nodded. Together they watched as the sea pulsed again, just briefly, a glow beneath the surface like a heartbeat returning after long silence. But this time it moved. A long shape drifted through the light, as if swimming just below the threshold of sight. It circled slowly, deliberately. Then the beam of the lantern caught it. A massive arch of stone, encrusted in seaweed and coral, breached the water momentarily. A structure, not a natural formation, rising from the deep. A doorway. The lighthouse groaned softly, as if acknowledging something ancient and forgotten. Elliot's breath caught. "That's impossible." "It's real," Eliza said, her eyes shimmering with reflection. "It's been waiting for someone to remember." For days the sea remained quiet, but the shimmer never fully left. Each night the glow would return, faint and distant, pulsing with the rhythm of the tide. Elliot and Eliza took turns keeping watch, not to ward anything off, but to listen. The melody had become clearer, transforming into a full, wordless harmony. And Elliot began to hear another voice layered beneath it. A man's voice. Familiar. James Mallory. Elliot began to speak to it, unsure if he was going mad or merely giving in to something older than sanity. He asked questions aloud, and the sea answered not in words but in feelings, in moments. One morning, Eliza found him staring out the window, hands trembling. "I saw him," Elliot said. He stood beneath the arch. His coat was dry. His face was calm. He looked at me like he forgave me. "You've never wronged him," she said gently. "But I doubted him. I doubted this place. You stayed. That's enough." Later that night, Eliza retrieved her compass. The needle spun slowly again, then stopped. Not west, not east, but directly toward the arch. "I think I'm meant to go," she said. Elliot stared at her, heart aching. "I thought we were both meant to stay." She smiled, eyes kind. "No one ever stays forever. Not even keepers." The next morning the sea was calm. Too calm. Eliza packed nothing but the compass and Mallory's journal. She dressed in a light shawl despite the chill, and stood at the edge of the path where the grass met stone. "You'll watch the light?" she asked. "I'll always watch the light," Elliot replied. She embraced him once, gently, and then turned down the winding path. The fog parted for her like a curtain. He watched her disappear into the morning haze. And then he waited. The hours passed slowly. At twilight, he climbed the tower and lit the lamp himself. The gears turned smoothly, the glass glowing as it rotated through the gloom. And then, just as the beam swept past the southern shoals, he saw it. A figure standing on the arch, arms raised. Below her, the water began to glow brighter than ever before. And then she was gone. Not in a flash, not in a fall. She dissolved into the light, and the sea accepted her. Days turned into weeks. The shimmer faded. The melody softened. The journal remained open, Elliot's own hand adding new entries now, some written, some sketched. Drawings of the arch, notations of the glow's rhythm. Fragments of dreams that seemed too real to dismiss. He never saw Eliza again, but he never felt alone either. Sometimes when the wind was just right, the melody returned. and with it the gentle echo of a clock's chime, not his own but one long buried beneath time and tide. He wrote to the village once, informing them the light was still operational. No one came up the path. He was fine with that. The lighthouse had changed. It had become something more than a signal for passing ships. It was a bridge. One quiet night, years later, Elliot stood in the lantern room, older now, slower in his steps. He watched the sea and felt it watching him back. Then, without warning, the glow returned, brighter than ever. This time it didn't beckon. It welcomed. He turned off the lantern for the first time in decades and descended the spiral stairs, leaving the door open behind him. The sea was calm, the path clear. He walked toward the edge of the world with no fear, only understanding. The lighthouse stood silent behind him, the beam no longer needed. And now, let the story carry you even deeper into rest. There's nothing more to do, nothing more to hear, just sleep and dreams and relaxing sounds.